link to the recorded version that you could share with others, let me know that also in an email, and I'll be happy to pass that along to you. So here we go. Let's get started and talk about the fundamentals of public speaking. Today, in the next hour, you are going to learn some tips and some tricks and some things that you can use right away. And that's what's going to make this webinar different than many of them out there, is that this is not just information that's nice to know. What you're going to learn over the next hour are some tips that you'll be able to use right away. And this is not only when you're speaking in public. This is not only for when you're delivering a presentation. When you think about it, all of us present all the time. Every day we are public speaking. But it may not be in front of a large group of people. It may be one-on-one in an interview. It may be speaking up in a meeting. It may be someone stopping you in the hallway at your office and saying, can you give me an update on this project? And then when you give them that update face-to-face, that's presenting. Presentations are any opportunity when you have the chance to take information from your head and get it into someone else's head. That's presenting. So today, in this next hour, you're going to walk away with 10 new lessons, 10 key tips that are going to help you anytime you have to convey information to any size audience, from one person to 1,000. So get ready for it. You're going to find ways to take this and apply these in your next meeting, your next phone call, your next interview. Throughout the session here today, feel free to type in any questions as I go along. I will try to take those in and address those right there on the spot. And then we'll have some time at the end for some extra questions and pointers and whatever I can do to help. So here we go. Let's get to it. Let's talk through our agenda first thing. Three-part agenda to this webinar today. We're going to begin by asking and answering the question, what's your ideal style? Meaning, how do you want to come across to others when you're speaking? This webinar is going to help you identify for you, what is your ideal style? How do you want to be perceived when you're delivering information? Then what you'll learn about are the 8 fundamentals of public speaking. Physical skills, body language skills, everything related to how do you convey information physically. We're going to cover those 8 fundamentals of public speaking. And then at the end, you're going to learn 2 additional tips related to communicating with confidence, helping you understand that it's not just body language, but it's also language and words that have a huge impact on the way you come across to others. All of these things are going to be covered over the next hour. As we go through, feel free to take notes. Take notes, share this information with others around you, and at the end I'll share some additional resources that are available to you. Now I'm going to do my best not to make this webinar an infomercial for my company. There's plenty of ways that you can gather that information. On our website at presentationtrainers.com, there's all sorts of detail there. But what I will do throughout the webinar is give you some examples from our workshops on how we help our clients hands-on work on these skills and help you learn from that. So here we go. Let's discuss this question. What is your ideal style? Now when I say that, what I'm not asking is, how do you come across today when you're speaking? Or how have you come across in the past? There's nothing we can do, unfortunately, about what has been in the past. All we can do is look ahead. So we cannot think about what has happened in previous presentations. Where we can have an impact is, how are you going to come across? How do you want to come across to your listeners? What we're going to do here is we're going to help you create the ideal perception for you as a speaker. Because it's cliche, but it actually is true. perception is reality. What this means in public speaking is that your listeners don't know you. So they don't know who you are. They don't know how have you come across in the past. All they care about is what they see and what that perception is of you as a speaker. And let's say you're speaking to 20 people. There are 20 different perceptions of who you are as a speaker. And every single one of those perceptions is right, because that's their perception. So the question is, how do you impact that? We'll get into that. But first, here's something I want you to think about, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of work to do. Let's create your ideal personal style. Here's an assumption. Here's what I want you to think about. Let's assume that you've just delivered a presentation. You've just given a presentation to any size group. And in your head, what I want you to imagine is that you've just finished up, and as you finish, you feel as if this was the best presentation you've ever delivered in your life. The best ever. Everything went perfectly the way you wanted it to. Nobody walked out. Nobody fell asleep. Nobody was texting under the table during the presentation. You had their attention the whole time. They were laughing in the right places. They were engaged. So now, let's say you just finished. You're done. And as you walk off stage, you feel like, wow, this is the best I've ever done. This was the presentation of my life. Here's the question. What would those listeners say about you when you're done? What words would you like to hear them use? What phrases would you like to hear as they talk about you after this great presentation? I'm going to ask you to type some words into the question spot right there in front of you on your screen. What words, what descriptive words, what adjectives would you like to hear those listeners use as they describe you after this greatest ever presentation? Let's see what you've got to say. Type it in. I'll share those with the group. So what would you like to hear those listeners say? Confident. Somebody typed in confident. Professional. Fantastic. Okay, here they come now. Informed. I see engaging. Fun. Okay, good. Some people want to come across as fun. Or funny. All right, there's another one. In control. All right, somebody typed in, wow, I never thought about the issue in this way. What else would you like to think outside of that box? Confident comes through again. Entertaining. Personable. All right, good. Keep them coming. What else would you like to hear your listeners say if this was the greatest ever presentation? All right, intelligent, professional. Now, keep them coming, but here's what's funny is there's some people that want to come across, that want to give off the perception of in control, professional, intelligent, calm. Other people want to be engaging, fun, excitable, really into it, entertaining. And there's no right or wrong. It really depends on you and what are you looking for your audiences. How do you want to be perceived? And here's the deal. Perception is reality. So it doesn't matter whether you feel confident, you feel funny, you think that you're doing a great job. The real question is that what the listeners think? And then if you want to come across, like you've said here, informed, professional, confident, intelligent, funny, do you always come across that way? Is that you every time you deliver a presentation or every time you speak up in a meeting? Do you always come across the ideal way? And of course, it would be nice to say yes. Of course I do, every time. That's me. But we all know that it's not that easy. And why aren't we always perceived the way we want? It's because physically and language-wise, sometimes we do things that give people the wrong impression. Your physical style, body language, has a huge impact on how you're perceived. And what you'll learn about right now is how do your physical skills impact perception. That's what we're going to get into, and we're going to do it by breaking it down to the fundamental skills of public speaking. Now, I guarantee as we get into this, you're going to realize that this is not rocket science. This is not overly complicated stuff. These are simple tools, but the question is, how do you do it effectively? So here are the 8 fundamentals of public speaking that we'll cover. Here they are: eye contact, gestures, your movement, your speaking pace and pauses, your non-words, the ums and the uhs, we'll get into those, your facial expression, and your energy level. All of these things play a role in how you're perceived by others and in how they get the information. So look at this list quickly. These are the things we're going to cover, but again, you realize, oh, I've heard of these things. I know about eye contact. Maybe you've taken a college class. Maybe you've been to Toastmasters and you've learned about some of these things. But the question again is, how do you do it right? How do you do it effectively? Let's take these one at a time. So here we go. Let's get into the fundamentals. We begin with eye contact. Is eye contact important? Of course it is. When someone makes eye contact with you, even whether one-on-one or if you're in an audience, when someone makes that eye contact with you, automatically you start to feel that this person is confident and honest, that they're being truthful with you and sincere and engaging. Just by making eye contact with people in your audience, you start to convey this sense of confidence, honesty. So you believe someone when they look you in the eye. Now here's the issue. When you get up in front of a large group of people, most speakers think, I got to make eye contact. So what do? They just scan the audience. They look over here, then here, then here. They look over here. And they touch your eye contact for a half second, and then they go on to someone else. Well, that's not connecting. That's not effective eye contact. What that is just blipping and touching on people. What you really want to do is connect with your listeners. And the way to do that is to deliver a complete thought to each person. Find one person, make eye contact with that person for a full thought. And then find someone else in the audience for a full thought, and another person for a full thought, a complete thought. But the question is, well, how long what does that mean? Is that 2 seconds? Is that 5? And it really depends. What it depends on is punctuation. A thought is over when there's a comma or a period or a question mark or an exclamation point. And that's when you move on to the next person. So the thinking should be no more than 1 sentence per person. Because if you choose one person, you deliver a whole paragraph worth of content to that person, other people feel left out, and this person feels uncomfortable. It's too much. So what do? A full thought to each person. It may be 1 sentence. So you'll look at one person and you give them 1 sentence, and when you hit the period, you move on to somebody else. Or it may be, though, that you do a half sentence. You start the sentence over here to your right, comma, and then you look to someone on your left, period. You drive it home. Now, here's what's important to know, though. All of these things feel different than they actually appear. When you maintain eye contact for that long, for 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds, to you, when you're doing it, it feels as if you're staring. It feels like it's way too much. But from the other side, it looks engaging. And even though it feels like 20 seconds, it's only 2 or 3 or 4 seconds. The point is that your listeners don't care how you feel. What they care about is how do you come across to them. So a lot of these things that we'll talk about today feel really weird. They feel strange. They feel overdone. But the question is, are they? Do they look that way from the listener's point of view? So you connect with people. And people will let you know when they've had enough eye contact. How do they let you know? Well, they look away or they nod their head at you. And when they nod their head, that means, okay, I get it. Go find somebody else. And you do have to look for those cues, but make sure that you do it right. If you find yourself up in front of a larger audience, let's say 30, 40, 100 people, you get this additional benefit of what we call the bowling pin effect. 100 people, you know that you're not going to make eye contact with everybody, but you want everyone to feel as if you did. So what you do is you pick different people in different sections of the room. And let's say you look at one person all the way in the back row. Well, what you find is you get all these other people sitting between you and that person nodding their head because they're not sure, is this speaker looking at me or the person behind me or the person in front of me? When you're far away, they can't tell. And who does that benefit? You. Because they all feel like you're looking at them, and that's the important piece. Whether you are or not, as long as they think you're looking at them, you get the benefit of coming across intelligent, confident, honest. Now, there are a lot of do's when it comes to these fundamentals. There are a lot of things, though, that you all want to be careful and don't do. So let's get into some of the don'ts when it comes to eye contact. Well, I touched on this. Don't stay too long with one person. Then you seem like you're a stalker. It's a little creepy. You don't want to do that. You give them a break. Don't stare at the screen or your notes in front of you. This is not meant to be a reading lesson. If you put PowerPoint up on the screen, don't just read to them. That's not really presenting. That's just reading. Don't stare at your notes either, or just down at the table or at your laptop. That doesn't work. And, as you can see in front of you, don't look down at the end of your thought. I'll try to demonstrate with my voice here. But what a lot of speakers do, they've got their notes in front of them, so they look down right at the end. They finish the thought right down to the paper, rather than making eye contact and finishing and driving it home. And imagine you're making a recommendation about money savings to your company. So you're going in and you're speaking to the executive team, and you're saying, we're going to save this company $50,000. And your eyes drop down to the notes because, oh, I'm in a hurry to see what I'm going to say next. But you got to finish what you're saying first. So you drive it home. You cross that finish line. You punctuate what you said with eye contact. It may feel as if you're staring. It won't look that way. Final point here. If you're someone that's not comfortable making eye contact with people, that's understandable. Not everyone is. So instead of looking your listeners directly in the eye, what do? You look right at that piece of skin right between their eyes, or look at the bridge of their nose. And sitting across from you, they won't know whether they're looking you right in the eye or you're looking at their nose. They don't know. Benefit to you. It really does work. So there's the first tip. Eye contact is critical. Let's move on. And now let's talk about gestures. And as you can see, gestures, what do you do with your hands? Now, to the picture here, I'm not saying, write notes on your hand. That doesn't always work very well. But what's funny about gestures is we use them all the time. As humans, we use gestures all the time. So what do you have to do? Well, you have to catch yourself gesturing when you're not presenting. What do you do when you're on the phone? Do you move your hands around? In one-on-one conversation, do you use your hands? Chances are you do. Most people gesture when they're not thinking about it. But what happens when you get up in front of a group is you're suddenly aware of your hands. And then as a speaker, what do I do with my hands? So most people just get them away. They get them out of the way. They put them behind their back or in front or in their pockets, or they clasp them together, and that's not effective. If we gesture all the time when we're not presenting, that's what you have to do when you are presenting, is use your hands. Now, it's not just because your hands show the picture, but really when you do use your hands, it increases your energy level. Here's a little insight for you. I'm sitting here in my office in Northbrook, Illinois by myself with a headset on. I'm standing at my desk, and I'm gesturing right now. And there's no one in the room here to see what I'm doing. But every time a person gestures, their voice gets stronger, and their facial expression changes. Those are a couple of the other fundamentals we'll get into. So you work on the gestures so that other things go well also. Now look, can it be too much? Have you ever seen somebody gesture too much? Of course. And there are certain gestures that don't work all that well. We can talk about those too. But you got to gesture. You got to use your hands. And if somebody tells you it's too much, don't necessarily take that as the honest God's truth. It could be that they're not comfortable with it, but other people may be. In a small group, you're not going to use the same size gestures as you would in front of a huge audience. If you're up on stage at a convention, your gestures have to be over your head. They have to be big. They got to be huge so everyone can see them. A smaller room, maybe they're dialed down just a little bit. But you do have to gesture. It is critical. Now, what do you have to be careful of? Well, hands are a giveaway to nervousness. You see that all the time, right? So you really want to be careful of just keeping your hands clasped together or rubbing your hands the whole time you're up in front of a group, or playing with your fingers, grabbing your fingers, all the little things that people do with their hands that the audience members may not sit there and think, she's rubbing her hands a lot. I wonder if she's nervous. They don't think that way consciously, but subconsciously, when they see you playing with your fingers, when they see your hands rubbing together or just gripped together in a death grip, something in their head is going to say, uh-oh, this person looks nervous to me. I'm not sure what it is, but they look nervous. So you got to be careful. Or steepling with your hand. You can do this right now. Take your right hand, open it up so the fingers are spread apart. Open up your left hand the same way, and touch the tips of your right hand fingers to your left hand fingers. And that's the steeple. You see people do this in presentations all the time. They bounce their fingers together from one hand on the other. What's funny is nobody does that when they're not presenting. Nobody does that on the weekends when they're talking to their kids. But up in front of people, we think that that helps us look professional. No, it becomes a distraction. What else shouldn't you do? You don't want to necessarily pick up a pen in the middle of your presentation, because we hear this all the time. In meetings and presentations, you pick up a pen, or you're twisting it around in your hands as you're talking. Or maybe your wedding ring, you find that, you start spinning it around, or that hangnail that suddenly shows up in the middle of your presentation that you sit there and play with. Well, that's probably not the confident, professional, engaging image that you want to give off to your listeners. Try to get rid of any of those little distractions. And be careful of crossing your arms, putting your hands on your hips, or pointing. Now, for those of you that live in the U.S., if you've been watching last week the Republican convention, this week the Democrats have their convention, you'll see a lot of speakers pointing. They put their finger out there, they point, they like wag their finger at you. And think about how that comes across. Vice President Biden did it last night. President Clinton did it the other night. Lots of finger wagging. Doesn't really work when you're in a presentation. Think about that. Do you like people pointing in your face? Probably not. So be careful. Now, what do you do instead of pointing? Well, instead of pointing, if you open up your hand and gesture towards your audience with all 5 of your fingers rather than pointing one finger at them, the perception is different. It feels softer. It feels more comfortable. It's easier on the eyes rather than pointing at someone. So now, look, I know I've made you paranoid at this point. What are you going to do? Are these things that you do? You got to gesture. The next time you're on a phone call, try to step outside your body for a second and look at the gestures that you're using there and see if those gestures are the kind that you could use when you're presenting. It'll surprise you. All right, so we've covered eye contact. We've covered gestures. I'm going to keep going here. Whenever you have a question, feel free to go ahead and type it into your question window, and I'll address those along the way. Next, movement. And yes, you see that picture in front of you of the guy kind of spinning around in circles. That's not effective movement. There are people that pace all over the place, that rock around in front of the group. And that's not good movement, that's distracting movement. When it comes to movement, you want to move around the stage with a purpose. You want to use the space that you're given effectively. Purposeful movement. What does that mean? Well, it may mean, let's say you're in front of 20 people. You don't just want to stand in one place. You want to move a little bit. So it means you have to take some steps over here to the right to engage the people sitting over there. And then you have to take some steps over to the left to engage the folks over there. Or maybe you want to go back to the screen and point out something on your PowerPoint slide. And then you come forward to really drive that point home. You move with a purpose. There's some reason behind the move rather than just the random distracting movement. But the key to really moving effectively is that from time to time, you got to stop. You got to stop moving so they can focus on what you're saying. And what do? You plant your feet when you get there. As they say in the Olympics, as they said last month in the Olympics, stick the landing. That's what you have to do. Movement is only good when you stop. So get where you want to get to, and when you get to that spot, literally, plant your feet in place. Now, why is that important? Well, here's the thing. When you plant your feet, all that energy that led to the rocking around or the excess movement, when you plant your feet in place, almost like they're nailed to the floor, all that energy that led to the rocking around, the pacing around, it's like hot air. That energy stays inside, but it rises. And you'll find that when you plant your feet, that energy is channeled into your hands and into your voice. So it's used in a positive way rather than making you look nervous with all the excess movement. To move effectively, you also can use your eye contact. So if you're on one side of the room and you want to get over to talk to the people on your left side, you look over to someone over there, you establish eye contact, and as you do that, you walk a little bit closer to that side, to where that person is sitting. So, and then you want to go back to your right, you look to somebody over there with your eye contact, and it pulls you right over that way. What you don't want to do is the opposite, which is looking at someone on your right as you're moving over to your left, because then it looks like you're trying to get away, and then it looks more tentative. It's not what you're going for. So what shouldn't you do when it comes to movement? Well, you don't want to just mosey. And for those of you that might not know what moseying is, it's just this slow, methodical movement going right along with the pace of your voice and just kind of slowly wandering across the stage. That's not effective movement. Purposeful movement means that you're taking some steps. I'm over here and I'm saying to myself, I got to get over to talk to them over there. So boom, 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 get over there. Get to the spot that you want to get to. When you get there, boom, boom. Stick the landing, plant your feet. As I said, be careful of pacing around or just rocking from side to side. You'll see people do that. They've got their feet in one place, but their body goes to the right, goes to the left, goes to the right, goes to the left. It's especially important if you're speaking from behind a podium or a lectern. And when you've got that solid piece of furniture in front of you, if you're rocking around, it's going to be magnified to the audience. They'll see it that much more. So you really want to plant your feet, get to the spot, stay there. The other thing to avoid doing too much is backing up. When you back up, it may look tentative. It may look weak. It may look like you're trying to get away from the audience. So move laterally. Move to your right. Move to the left. If you need to go back to the screen, turn your back for a second, walk back there, turn back to the crowd, deliver the information. The movement is great when it's got a purpose. If there's not a reason to move, stop moving. Next, your speaking pace. Now, I'm sure that in this group on the webinar, we've got some fast talkers. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with fast talkers, although you don't want to look like an auctioneer like the guy in the picture here. With your speaking pace, you want to keep it natural. You don't want to go too fast. You don't want to go too slow. You want to keep it as natural as you can. But you don't want it to be rigid. You don't want to just have the same speaking pace the whole time. Top speakers, if you've been listening to the conventions this week, the best ones are the ones that mix up their speaking pace. Sometimes you go a little bit faster, and then other times, to make a point, you slow down. Maybe you build it up, you build it up, you build it up, you build it up, and then you slow it down. And it keeps your listeners on their toes, keeps them thinking, keeps them wondering what's coming next. It's the rhythm. You got to keep the rhythm going. You got to mix it up. Now, part of your speaking pace actually is enunciation. The problem, when people speak too quickly, they just blur their words together, and they go and they go and they go, and it's almost hard to hear what the person is saying because it's so fast. Well, instead of slowing down when it suddenly sounds unnatural, if you enunciate or think about enunciating clearly, it's going to help monitor your speaking pace. And it's going to help people follow what you're saying even better. Now, what shouldn't you do when it comes to your speaking pace? Well, don't go too fast. If you go way too fast, people can't keep up. They can't process what you're saying. And you don't want to go to the other extreme of going too slowly, because then people get bored. And when they get bored, they tune out and they stop listening. So keep them listening by mixing up your speaking pace. Now, if you are a fast talker, there's a better solution than slowing down. Instead of slowing down your pace, you increase the number of pauses in your presentation. Pausing is great. Pauses really do help your listeners for a number of reasons. Pauses help you as a speaker, and they help your listeners. How does that happen? Well, think about what happens when you pause. When you pause up in front of a group, everyone sitting out there thinks about what you were just saying. They process the point you just made. And at the same time, while they're thinking about what you just said, you get the opportunity to think about what you're going to say next. So when you pause, two things are happening. They're thinking about what you said. You're thinking ahead to the next point. And it's a bonus to everyone. When you do pause, it adds a little bit of drama to what you're saying and makes an impact. Because when you pause, your listeners are thinking, wow, never thought about that. If you just go and go and go and there's no pause in there, there's no pause, it's hard for them to know what's important and what's not. Your information is in one ear and out the other because there's no time for them to process. And they need that. When you pause, it tells your listeners, this is critical, this is important. Think about it. Back to an earlier example, you don't want to go into the executive boardroom and say, with everything we're doing, we're going to save $50,000, so here's what we got to do. We got to do this, 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 this. No impact to that number at all. But if you say, with everything we've talked about here today, we're going to save $50,000. And that's just in the first month. The pause lets your listeners think about that and understand the importance. Now, what are some of the don'ts when it comes to pausing? Well, You don't want to rush through the pauses. Here's what I'll tell you, and this is important for you to understand. When you're up in front of a group, everything feels magnified. So when you pause, let's say for 2 seconds, internally inside you, it feels like about 10 seconds. When you pause for 5 seconds, it feels like an hour because you can hear your heartbeat going boom, 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 boom. But our clients in our workshops, when they see themselves on video working on pauses, and that's really the key is to see the video, they realize that, wow, the pause felt like a long time, felt like an eternity, wasn't nearly what I thought. Don't rush through your pauses, and don't fill your pauses up with noise. So many speakers are uncomfortable with that silence in the room. So they fill the pauses up with noise. And what do I mean by that? So that leads into this next fundamental, non-words. People fill up those pauses with noise. And there's a whole list of non-words right there in front of you. So, like, okay, right. There's all sorts of non-words out there. And what those non-words are, they're actually pauses, but we fill them up with noise because we hate that silence in the room. Now, why are non-words a problem? Look, we all use them. We're human. Canadians up there, you got one more, right? They get an extra non-word up north. But what non-words do is they give this sense to your listener that maybe you're unprepared. Maybe you really haven't thought about this very much. Or worse yet, when the speaker is up there, glad to be here today to give you a better sense of what we're working on. Not only do you seem unprepared, but you seem like you just don't know what you're talking about. And that really becomes the case. It's perception. You may be intelligent. You may know what you're talking about. But if you're umming your way through it, people think you don't, or you're not intelligent. So how do you get rid of non-words? Well, the first thing is you got to be aware of where they're coming in and be aware of what they are. Remember, all they are pauses filled up with noise. So the way they get beyond non-words, pause. As you start to feel that sentence about to come up, or that non-word about to come out, you pause. And as you pause, you have to think ahead. What's that word I really want to say? What's the word? And just insert the word instead of the Now, is it that easy? No, of course it's not. The other thing is be prepared. The better you know your information, the better you've learned your content, the fewer non-words are going to be there. In the workshops that we do with our clients, what we do is we call their attention to non-words by snapping our fingers. So every time a client is in conversation and says, snap our fingers. And yes, it becomes annoying, but it shows you right away how many of these you use, and you start to learn your pattern. It's a little device. So I'll encourage you to do this with your kids, with your coworkers. Teach them that in my house, we call it the snapping game. And kids love it. They love it. They think it's great. A couple of comments are coming in I'd like to share with the group here. One person has typed in that he tends to start almost every sentence with the word so. That's become very common these days. You ask people a question and they start the answer. So what we're doing here, so the way to make this investment, and it's just that filler, they stretch it out. So, and if listeners are noticing that, they're not paying as much attention as they should. So you got to be prepared. That's the other thing that people are typing in here. Preparation really is the key. So when it comes to non-words, yes. Now look, we are human. They are going to come out. But listen, if you speak for a half hour and you use 2 or 3 non-words, Nobody cares. Nobody notices. They only notice when there's a pattern, when you're overdoing it. So don't get upset about one or two non-words. One or two is not a problem. And what's the other don't here? Don't use them. Don't use non-words. Catch yourself. Try it. Snap yourself. Listen for where they're coming in. And as that non-word is bubbling up and it's about to come out through your mouth, just swallow it down. Again, jump ahead. What's the word I'm looking for? Choose your words carefully. Do it. The next fundamental, facial expression. And here's our poster child for facial expression right in front of you. That's Jim Carrey. Now here's the deal. I am not telling you all, you've got to get up in front of your next audience and look and act like Jim Carrey, because he's kind of crazy. He's over the top. So you don't necessarily want to look that way, but because everything up in front of the group feels exaggerated, you've got to feel as if you're channeling Jim Carrey when you're up there. You got to feel like your eyebrows are way up there, like your eyes have opened huge, like you have a big smile on your face, huge. Because when you think you're smiling, you're not. When you think you're being expressive, you're not. In fact, in business today, it seems like there's only one allowable facial expression. And what is it? It's serious. People put on that serious face. Why? Because, well, I want people to take me seriously. Well, look, you don't have to look and act serious for people to take you seriously. When you're expressive, that puts some passion behind the message. What does it mean? Sometimes you got to smile. If you're saying, we've got good news, we're excited to have you here, thanks for being here, you want to scowl your way through that? Thank you for being here today. We're very excited. I'm sure you can tell I'm pumped. We got some great news we want to share. I'm really excited about this. Well, you don't look like it. And if you don't look like it, you don't sound like it either. It's reflected in your voice. So what do you have to do? If it's good news, sometimes you have to smile. But not just smiling. Don't let your eyebrows go up. Open up your face a little bit. Put some feeling in there. Being expressive puts the feeling behind the words. If there's no expression there, then you could just give them the notes. You can write it out for them, let them read the article, and put the feeling in themselves. But if you're presenting it, it's up to you to convey that passion, to convey whatever feeling goes along with it. Now, what are the don'ts? Well, if you're giving bad news or you're reporting not so good results, that's not where you're going to smile. Hey, you're all being laid off. Woohoo! You're getting a severance package. Yay! No, that's not when you do it. That's when you put on the serious face. That's when you show them, all right, I'm taking this seriously. What else? Well, as I said, don't worry about how it feels. When you overdo the facial expression, it feels goofy. It feels weird. Our clients experience this all the time. They think they've got a big, huge smile on their face, and then they go and they watch the video that we've taken, and they see it was just a teeny little bit, not nearly what they thought. You can overdo it, and it won't be as much as you think. The last fundamental here, your energy level. We would all rather see a speaker that's got some energy than the person who doesn't. Because if there's no energy, then you're putting your listeners to sleep. It's boring. It's dry. Energy, we call the great mask. When you bring energy to your presentation, it covers up all sorts of other little distractions. So if you're being energetic, maybe you're speaking just a little too quickly, but people get pulled in. Or maybe you're rocking around on your feet just a little too much, but you're so energetic that people get caught up. You got to bring the energy. Now, how does it come out? Really, the best way to convey energy is with your voice. Vocal variety. Letting your voice go up high, letting it go down low. Getting a little bit louder, getting a little bit softer. Rather than speaking in a monotone. Now, we've all heard that, right? The person that gets up and says, I'm really excited to be here today. Thanks for having me. I got a lot of great news I want to share with the group. We've had a lot of successes over the last month, and you're putting people to sleep. It's almost as if you're reading a book to little kids. When you read to kids, you put the voices in, right? We all do. You don't open up the book and say, I do not like green eggs and ham. I do not like them, Sam, I am. You put the voices in. That's what you have to do when you're presenting. Bring the vocal variety. Now, it's certainly, the type of energy depends on the topic. There's enthusiasm and there's conviction. Enthusiasm is for when it's good news. You want to get people pumped up. You want to get them excited about this new project or the new product that you're selling. So sometimes you want to be enthusiastic, but other times you go for conviction. You're trying to deliver a strong point. Hey, this is critical. We've had some issues that we have to deal with. Or maybe you're trying to take ownership of a problem. Look, did we screw up? Yes. Are we going to change things the next time? Absolutely. It's still energetic, but it's different. Then it's conviction, not enthusiasm. Now, a question just came through. What can somebody do to reduce showing nervousness? How do you make sure that you're not showing nervousness? Well, one great thing to understand is that you don't always look as nervous as you feel. Even if you feel nervous, the question is, do you look it? Now, there are things that we're talking about here, ways that you can reduce looking nervous, using your hands effectively rather than rubbing them, standing still, planting your feet rather than rocking around. If you feel the voice shaking, get a little bit louder. Project your voice out there. What I would encourage any of you to do, though, is practice on video. Videotape yourself delivering this presentation. And as you watch yourself on video, do you look as nervous as you felt? And once you know that you don't look as nervous as you think you do, it actually helps. Helps increase your confidence level. Now, what are the don'ts when it comes to energy? Well, don't just increase your volume. You don't just want to sit there and yell at your audience. If you were watching the Democratic convention this week, there was a lot of yelling going on. There were a lot of people that just got up there and delivered their speech like this, and that's not necessarily energy, that's just yelling. You got to bring the variety. And don't hold back on your energy. Don't feel like, oh, I might be overdoing it here. You're never really going to overdo it. And understanding that, you can go further than you think, trusting that you're not going to overdo it. Our clients see this all the time. We get them working on different energy levels, even to the point where I sometimes get them to feel as if they're a used car salesman. And when they see the video, it's never as far as they thought they were going. And you got to trust that. A question has come through about stuttering. What if you start to stutter? Now there is, stuttering is physical. So there are people who do stutter, and there are speech pathologists and speech coaches that can help with that. The best tool for stutterers is pausing. Pause, gather your thoughts, slow down a little bit so you can really take your time. But also understand that you're human and things are going to happen. People won't necessarily remember the fact that you lost track of your thoughts or you stuttered. What they will remember is, how did you react to it? So don't freak out. Calmly deal with it, move on, and they'll see confidence. All right, so we've now covered the 8 fundamentals of public speaking, but there's a couple of more things. It's not just body language that conveys confidence. It's also language. Words have a huge impact. Nobody wants to come across looking like this guy on your screen. Nervous, unsure. Nobody wants to come across that way, but we've all seen speakers that look that way, that do look nervous and sound nervous. A lot of speakers lose confidence by overdoing qualifiers. You have to catch your use of qualifiers. What are qualifiers? Here's some right on the screen in front of you. I think, we hope, this should, we feel, it might, I believe. When you overuse words and phrases like this, it makes you as a speaker sound kind of wishy-washy. Imagine going into your boss's office to make a recommendation and saying, hey boss, I think that this might really be a good solution. And I hope that you will consider giving me the approval for this. If you do, there's a good potential that it may just have some kind of an impact here on our team. Yeah, kind of wishy-washy, not sure of yourself. Now look, I can't tell you that these qualifiers are always wrong. They're not. Sometimes you have to qualify your statements. So really, in reality, you've got three options, and it depends on the situation. You qualify if it has to be there. You're never going to have someone say, put your money here, you're going to get 25% return on this investment. They always hedge. They always qualify. So sometimes you have to do it. But other times, you can take out the qualifier and let the statement just be unqualified. Instead of going into the presentation and say, we think we've got a great solution to this problem. We think we've got a great solution? No, you can take out the thing. We've got a great solution to this problem. You say it with confidence. And if you can back it up, great. So get rid of the qualifier or change your language and use stronger language. So instead of going into a sales call and saying, if you work with us, here's what you would get. If you work with us, here's what you would get? No, no, no. When you work with us, here's what you're going to get. With this product in place, you're going to get the results you're looking for. You use stronger language. We know, we're confident, this is going to. Now the question is, how does it feel to do that? It makes you feel kind of cocky. It makes you feel almost like, who am I to go in and say, we're confident that this is a great solution. But if you're not doing that, maybe your competition is. So you can catch yourself. If you catch yourself qualifying as you're speaking, correct it right there and then. And it makes it seem even stronger to say, what we think is, no. What we know is that this is going to make a difference. Or instead of saying, so here's what I feel. No, not what I feel. Here's what I know. What I know is that this is going to have an impact. And you feel cocky, you sound confident. Catch yourself using qualifiers as much as you can. Get rid of them or change them in the right situation. One last point here. We have covered the 8 fundamentals of speaking, communicating with confidence, getting rid of qualifiers. There are 3 other words that we encourage our clients to stay away from. 3 little words. And the words are I and me and my. Think about how it takes away from your confidence. Actually, it seems like you're overconfident, but it actually takes away. When you go into a presentation and say, I'm glad to be here, let me tell you why I'm here. I'm here, I've got a lot of great information that I want to share. First, I'm going to tell you about my background. Then I'm going to tell you what an impact this has had on my career. Then I'm going to share some of my tips for how I've done this and what it means to me. And it's all about me, 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 me. And your listeners sit out there thinking, all right, she's really full of herself. What about us? Your listeners are the ones that determine whether you succeed or fail. Well, we encourage our clients, get rid of these personal pronouns as much as you can. Instead of saying, I'm here today because I want to teach you about presenting, turn it around. You're here today to learn all about presenting. When you walk away, you're going to have a much better understanding. You're going to have a clearer picture. You're going to know how this works. And this is not about me, this is about you. So anytime you can do this, get rid of the I, me, or the my. Instead of, my presentation today will show you, no, here's what this presentation is going to show you. You're going to learn. This is all about them. This is not about you. The only time it would be okay is if you're taking ownership. If you're saying, look, if there's an issue, you call me. I'll take care of it. It's probably also right to say, my name is. Fine. Nobody's going to beat you up over my name is. You don't want to talk about yourself in the third person, so that's fine. But you don't want to make the whole thing about you. You want to focus on your listeners. So there you go. You've taken an hour of your time to learn all about presentations, about public speaking, and you've learned how your physical skills impact perception. You've also learned now how your language impacts the way you're perceived by others. So in just a moment, I'm going to open this up to some further questions, but here's a quick 30-second infomercial for you. If you decide that you want to spend more time hands-on working on these skills, there certainly is help available, whether it's with us at EMS Communications or with others out there. If you decide that you'd like to investigate this, that you want to look into working on your own skills, we have a 2-day workshop that we offer here at our offices just north of Chicago, Illinois. The workshop is called Sell It, Don't Tell It, Taking Business Presentations to the Next Level. It is a hands-on workshop. It's a 2-day workshop, but it's a small group. We limit it to 8 participants maximum. Right here at our offices in Northbrook, the fee per person, the cost is $1,350 per person for the 2 full days. You just have to get yourself here to Chicago, put yourself up for a couple of nights. We provide breakfast and lunch, and there's a ton of videotaping and critique and coaching. Over the 2 days, there are 4 videotape segments that happen. And what's great about it is all the video review is private, one-on-one. So I do all the classroom facilitation. My partner, Eric, takes people privately, one-on-one, to break down the video and watch it, and to see how things actually look compared to how they felt when you worked on it. In front of you, you've got dates for the next few months for upcoming sessions. We've actually got one coming next week, which you probably won't make it for. But if you decide you'd like to look ahead, the dates are listed on our website at presentationtrainers.com. And if you want to sign up, either by email or by calling us, let us know that you heard about it through the webinar, and we'll give you $100 off the fee just by mentioning the webinar. Or even if you pass this along to others and say, you should do this, tell them to mention the webinar. Whether they were there or not, they'll get $100 off the fee for the workshop. And during those workshops, it's fun, it's tough. You end up walking away, though, with a flash drive that we give you. And on that flash drive is all of the video that you've done over the 2 days. So then you've got that there to go back and review on your own, to use as a tool to help give you some reminders as you go into future presentations. So there you go. As the car talk guys on the radio say, you've wasted a perfectly good hour of your time with us here today. And I appreciate your being here, appreciate the time. Let me tell you also, if you'd like to learn more about what we offer here at EMS Communications, we do offer customized corporate workshops. We do one-on-one coaching. We do large group seminars. We do this across the board. We even go out and speak for groups all the time, just for short periods of time like this. At EMS, it's our mission to rid the world of boring presentations, one speaker at a time. And if this webinar has helped fulfill our mission just a little bit, I'm glad to be able to have helped out with that. I will encourage you to visit our website, presentationtrainers.com, for more information. You can fill out a contact form there if you'd like to learn more. Or you could give me a call directly. You've got my direct number right there in front of you on the screen, and I'd be happy to speak with you, to answer whatever questions I can, to offer any tips that I can along the way. So here we go. Now we've got, I know we are at right at 12 o'clock, and if you need to drop off, I'll certainly understand. But I've got some time for questions here, so if you would like to jump in with a question, feel free to go ahead and type it into the question window, and I'll be happy to answer. So stick around. Let's see what we've got coming in. And here's the first one from Clayton. Clayton says, is it accurate to say everything feels more extreme when you're speaking? You do what feels exaggerated and awkward. Clayton, that's exactly right. Everything when you're up in front of a group, if you feel like you're gesturing, you'll see they go out a little bit. You got to get them out farther. If you think you're using some vocal variety, push it a little bit further. And what should you do? Practice in front of other people. Practice this in front of a video camera. And take yourself to the point where you feel like I overdid it. Feel like you're really giving way more than you would. And get some feedback from people. Did it seem like it was too much, or did it seem okay? Most of us have something inside of us that's going to hold us back from going too far, from going crazy, from bouncing off the walls. So when that's the case, once you know that that's the case, then you can go pretty much as far as you want and understand that you've got that internal emergency parking brake that will work for you. All right, what other questions have you got? Here are, another question is talking about, well, what if you're standing up and having to read a speech or standing behind a podium? And that is a little bit of a different situation, but not all that different. That podium in front of you, all it really is a piece of furniture that's been designed to hold your notes. And that's really all that it is. But what do most people do? Well, most people, they stand there behind that lectern, they put their hands on the side, and they hang on. And then once they're finally done with the presentation, they peel their fingers that have been sweated to the side of the lectern, they peel them off, and they walk away. Well, no, that lectern is only there to hold your notes. So what do? Well, you actually stand about 6 to 8 inches behind that lectern, so you're not leaning right up against it and holding on to it. And what do? You raise your hands up, so you gesture. You don't hang on to the lectern, you gesture, you let your hands go. And then you plant your feet back there so you don't feel like you're rocking around, and with that lectern in front of you, they'll notice that even more. Now, if the lectern has a microphone and that's where your mic is, sometimes you have to stay there. But if this is a situation where everyone in the room can hear you, or you've got a lapel microphone on, what do? Well, you can move away then. You don't have to stay right there at the lectern. You can move off to your left. You can move to your right. You can move out front and lean on the lectern for a little while. It really does work. So you got to be careful. Don't just rely on the notes that are right there. All sorts of ways to do this. All right, what other questions can I answer along the way? Somebody came through with a question about what did I say about pausing? Can I go back to that slide? Sure, give me 1 second. Let me find the slide about pausing so you can take down those notes. That was back on slide, I believe that was slide number 9. Let's go back to it. There you go. Umberto, there's the tips on pausing. Basic tip is extend those pauses. Let them go long. Really draw them out. There are the don'ts right there in front of you. What other questions can I answer? Okay, here's a question that somebody said, what about conference calls? Now, conference calls, yes, they're a little different situation. You don't have the face-to-face. You don't have that face-to-face in when you are on a conference call. All you've got is your voice. But what you have to think about in terms of these fundamentals on the phone is a lot of these other things help your voice get more variety. For instance, gesturing. When you gesture, your voice changes. When you use your facial expression, your voice goes up and down a little bit more. So on a phone call, don't just sit there and stare at the phone or stare at the speakerphone in the middle of the table. Stand up. Use your gestures. Be expressive. Even though they can't see you from the other side, they're going to hear the impact in your voice. It really does work. All right, Sandra has chimed in with a question about what if you know you speak quickly? What can you do to slow yourself down? Here's a perfect tip for that, Sandra, and for all of you. Think about punctuation. A comma is a short pause. A period at the end of a sentence is a longer pause. A period or punctuation at the end of a paragraph, even a longer pause. And you have to make that pause feel painful. 2, 3, 4 seconds. It's never what you think. Another thing that you can do is here's a phrase to think about. And this phrase works or other phrases work. The phrase can be, you know what I mean? Does that make sense? Now, I'm not telling you have to say that phrase. You don't have to speak that phrase. What you have to do is think that phrase in your head. After you make a point, as you're looking at that person and holding their eye contact, think in your head, do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? But you're just not verbalizing it. That way, you're checking in, you're pausing. You just have to trust the silence. Trust that it's okay to stay quiet. Even though it feels painful, it really does work. All right, some more questions coming in. Speaking to upper management, and someone Tanya saying she gets nervous with upper management, and sometimes her words kind of get mixed up, and it doesn't sound knowledgeable. How can you fix that? Well, what I would say is preparation is the key. Being as prepared as you can. Number one, most important. How do you reduce that nervousness? The more prepared you are, the less nervous you're going to be. But you also do have to pause. A lot of times, if you don't pause, that's where you get tripped over words. During the pause, that's where you look at your notes, you glance down, and in your head you're thinking to yourself, what am I saying next? What do I say? What do I say next? And you say it. It will feel less confident. It will look and sound more confident. Someone else is talking about breathing deeply, and the audience won't notice your nervousness. Breathing is important when you speak. Definitely, it's important. Taking a deep breath, forcing more air past your vocal cords gets rid of that kind of breathy sound or the nervous voice that you might have. You get louder. You project your voice more. You put more force behind it. It really does work. Thank you, Umberto, for that. Well, folks, I know that we've all got things to do here today, and you have spent your time here. I would be happy to answer any other questions by email. If you want to email them to me, again, it's my first name, Elliot, that's E-L-I-O-T, @presentationtrainers.com. Let me go back to that one more second for you so you have that in front of you. Feel free to track me down. If you would like to get a copy of the PDF slides for this, please do send me an email. That would be the best way for me to know who to get that back to, and I'll be happy to send that to you. If you're looking to find out more about what we offer here at EMS Communications, I will be happy to share that information. So send me an email. I'll give you the full rundown on everything that we offer here. But please take advantage of these skills. Use them. Take advantage. It makes a huge impact on perception. So thanks for being here today. Glad you were able to join us on this webinar. And if we can be a resource for you down the line, check out our website, sign up for our monthly electronic newsletter that's called Speaker's Digest. Go to our website, download a copy of our free ebook, which you can find right there. Go to our website. It's in the free stuff section on our website. Hope everyone has a great weekend, have a great day, and keep getting out there and working on those presentations and help us fulfill our mission of ridding the world of boring presentations one speaker at a time. Have a great day, everyone. Take care.